Welcome back to Adventures of a Black Belt Sommelier, sponsored by Four Paws Restaurant, the iconic fine dining restaurant in St. Paul, Minnesota, with wonderful food, attentive professional service, and fantastic wine. Um, it's quite a few years ago, I had hosted a tasting of the wines of Sette Ponti, which means Seven Bridges Tuscan Winery, Bulgari Winery, at for my store in Nashville. This is probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe. And the owner of Sette Ponti, Alberto Moretti, was there just to present his wines. I think his haircut cost more than my car. He was the most elegant person I think I've ever seen in person. Um, he I think he pretended to not speak English. He had a translator with him. Uh, Based on what I later found out about him, that's part of the story. I strongly suspect that he spoke English or speaks English. But anyway, his wines are wonderful, really wonderful. They were really wonderful that night, and people loved them, and we would have probably sold quite a bit of them. But he referred several times to the fact that he didn't really need to. One of the reasons that his wines were so special is that he didn't need to make money in the wine business because he'd been so successful in his main business. He said this a couple of times through the translator, and eventually somebody asked him what his main business was, and he said, "Well, I actually owned Prada." So the sales of the wines kind of tripled because everybody wanted a bottle of the Prada wine, and most of the women wanted a bottle of the Prada wine. And of course, even though his wines aren't inexpensive, they cost a whole lot less than a Prada bag or shoes. So anyway, it was a very successful event. He was a charming, very, very charming, and as I said, extremely elegant guy. And his wines are wonderful. Um, it's just a fun night. Interesting to meet him, the owner of Prada, when I thought I was meeting the owner of a winery. Um, One night recently, the general manager of Four Paws brought up a glass of wine and gave it to me at the bar while I was waiting for my dinner and said, "We occasionally do this. We go through the wine tasting process because he's preparing for the third level master sommelier exam." So I went through the process, of what I thought it was. And um, I often say blind tasting is just an opportunity for embarrassing yourself. And the likelihood that you're going to be correct about the wine is based to a great extent on how much the person conducting the blind tasting likes you. If it's a Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon or a Burgundy, Pinot Noir from Burgundy or something like that, it's the person putting on the tasting likes you. If it's a Terrell Dago or something like that, some really offbeat, crazy grape from a offbeat, crazy place, then the person putting on the tasting doesn't like you and is just trying to embarrass you, which in general, unless you're really good at the blind tasting, like as some people are, um, you're just going to embarrass yourself. It's almost impossible to identify grape variety, country, region, and vintage correctly when you have nothing to go by except what's in the glass. But anyway, I went through the process on this one, and I felt that um, it was youthful, high quality, um, red, obviously red wine, with no sediment, no effervescence. Um, the color, it was intense, kind of ruby red with very little rim variation. On the nose, it didn't strike me as being particularly varietal. I was kind of thought it might be a blend. Um, it was not, there was moderate or less acidity, moderate for these days alcohol, some oak, but not heavy-handed oak. Um, and on the palate, it was rich and concentrated and dark, lots of dark fruits, mocha, um, some floral characters. So anyway, for me, based on my going through the process, what the master sommelier is called the grid, and I did it obviously in much more detail than I'm recounting now, but um, I felt like it was a Bordeaux blend. Um, um, and I I surmised that it was a right bank Bordeaux, 5 years old, from a high quality vintage, and very high quality producer. Um, so that would have been a 2020 right bank Bordeaux. Um, I would say that I did pretty well. I don't do that much this kind of blind tasting. I taste my blind all the time, but I don't do that much of the the kind of parlor trick kind of blind tasting as I used to. So I don't have a lot of practice, but I thought it turned out. I think I turned out pretty well. It was the 2021 Sette Ponti Oreno, which is a Bordeaux blend from Bulgari in Tuscany. So it was extremely eastern Bordeaux, Bulgari, southwest Tuscany on the coast. Um, Cabernet 50% Cabernet Sauvignon, 40% Merlot, and 10% Petit Verdot. Very, very high quality wine, really lovely wine. Um, so I didn't feel like I did too badly. Um, I would have not passed the master sommelier exam, but I might have gotten a pat on the back for knowing that it was a Bordeaux blend. And of course, it would have been better if I'd said it was a left bank Bordeaux, not a right bank Bordeaux, since it was predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon. But it had the kind of richness and texture and mouthfeel, I thought, of a Pomerol. Um, but anyway, having said all that, 2021 Sette Ponti Oreno is a terrific wine. It's not inexpensive. It's going to cost you about $140, something like that, but it's worth every penny. It's really, really, and I think, um, you know, give it another 4 years and it'll start to really show its stuff and be lovely drinking for quite a while. It's a long-term wine. Thanks for tuning in to Adventures of a Black Belt Sommelier. If you have any similar blind tasting experiences to share with me, I'd love to hear about them, especially the ones where you were really, really wrong. It's, it's impossible. I mean, some guys are so good at it. Some men and women are, so talented at it and they practice it and work at it. And if you've seen the Somm documentaries, you know that there is a process. It's pretty rigorous. And it's kind of like high school algebra. You have to show your work. You can't just say, I think this is, 2010 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. You have to tell them why you think it's 2010 Chateau Lafite Rothschild to pass. If you've seen those documentaries, if you haven't, you should watch them. They're on Netflix. They're fantastic, or on YouTube, I think. Um, they're 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 fantastic and funny and interesting. So if you've seen those, you know some people are really, really good at this. I'm pretty good at it, but that wasn't my best night. Thanks for tuning in to Adventures of a Black Belt Sommelier. Come by and see me at Four Paws. As I've said before, we have fresh white Alban truffles, and we have a fabulous Barolo for you to drink with them on some pasta or some beef Wellington or some lamb chops. Last night we shaved some on some broccolini for a lady, which was a surprising choice of all the things she had on her that she had ordered. She wanted the white truffles on the broccolini. It's probably pretty good.